something that I said yesterday that I found out by doing, again, I've been doing a little research.
Oh, doing his own research.
On the Googles.
Vaccines.
That's it. Nope, not on the vaccines, not on how you go. Nope, not QAnon. And somebody asked me yesterday if I'd ever castrated a cow, but that's a whole different conversation. I found out it's pigs. I did a lot of pigs. Anyway, the U.S. workforce is made up of 33% veterans. You know why there's 33% veterans in the U.S. workforce? Is because they get preferential hiring. And you know what? I like that veterans get preferential hiring. If you're going to go fight for this country, you're going to put your life on the line, you're going to shoot bullets at our enemy, come back here, we'll give you a job. Count me in every day and twice on Sundays. Those folks have lost their jobs, lots of them. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast. Your eyes are not deceiving you. Look who's with me in Washington, D.C. at the Solidarity Global Headquarters here right after, not the State of the Union, but the joint address to Congress. Mike Madrid came in to make sure that Donald Trump could find his way from the U.S. Capitol, I'm pointing at the Capitol, to the White House. Mike, let me turn the mic to Mike. How are you doing?
Doing great. What an honor to be here at the global headquarters for Solidarity. It is, yeah, it's massive. There's thousands of employees walking around.
Please, no autographs. No autographs.
Manipulating the political systems of countries all over the globe. It's remarkable. I got in late last night, Chuck, like 11. Supposed to land at 8:30. Sat on the tarmac for an hour because there was a Trump plane.
Because there was a homeless man in Sacramento on the airport runway.
Always beating up on Sacramento. But yeah, here having some great meetings this morning. Got to spend a little time with you, and in town for some immigration discussions that will be happening, which I'm sure we'll be talking about at some point. But yeah, interesting time to be in DC.
Are you going to fix the immigration system? I love this microphone where you can't talk. So I could just take it over here. We can have our own podcast. No, I'm joking. I won't do that. So let's talk about what happened last night with the State of the Union. As all of you know, first of all, it was the longest joint address to Congress in the history, 99 minutes. Also last night, it was like a campaign rally just to joint members of Congress, where he gave out scholarships to West Point. He gave out to an amazing young man who has brain cancer, where he could become a Secret Service agent, which I thought was the most moving piece. But there wasn't a lot of conversation and I'm going to turn it back over to Mike, about what he would talk about, which is affordability issues. To my judging, there was only 2 minutes out of the 99 where he really talked about the price of eggs, and then he actually blamed that on Joe Biden.
Yeah, look, I didn't put myself through the nightmare of having to watch the whole thing. I caught the first. Yeah,
the rest of us did.
Caught the first part of it. I caught the last part of it. I went and had a meal late night here in DC in the middle of it, knowing I wouldn't miss anything. I don't think that I did. But look, it doesn't surprise me at all that there wasn't any talk about the economy, because consumer confidence is crashing. Donald Trump's numbers on the economy are lower at any point for a sitting president right now in his administration, amongst independents, certainly, than with any president ever in history. He's still maintaining his Republican base. He's always going to, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But he's not going to talk about the economy. He's going to talk about everything but the economy. And where he does have to talk about the economy, he's going to blame Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or whoever he's going to blame for this economy. And so I don't think we should be surprised by the fact that he's heading down that direction. I will say this, and I do think that the fact that he did not talk about it means that he acknowledges that that's his weak points too. And if Democrats can't start moving offensively on the economy, one, shame on them, but two, there's going to have to be something that steps up to fill that void and fill that gap. One other quick observation, Chuck, I want to get what your thoughts are on this. Look, this was not a State of the Union address. There is no formal requirement that Congress have a joint session for State of the Union addresses. They are a function of the Constitution, but the Constitution only says every year the president shall report to Congress on the State of the Union. For most of our history as a country, it was just done in a letter. Here's just a letter. State of the Union's fine. Things are going great. I'll follow up by horseback and letter if we need to do anything else. You guys need to be aware of anything. This became a much more of a spectacle during the TV age, the television age. And I'm saying all this, providing this history, because there is no reason why I think Democrats or any opposition party should be party to a spectacle like this that desecrates the House of Representatives or the United States Congress. And look, we all know Trump's going to lie. He lied, I think, some untold amount, 90 times, I think, in the first 30 minutes. There's no reason to be party to this when it is just a campaign rally and utilizing the floor of the House of Representatives as a campaign rally. I think it's a mistake. I think Democrats should just not show up and stop using the State of the Union as a platform when it's going to be used for lying, for misinformation campaigns, and for political campaigns generally. I don't know how you feel about it, Chuck, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I kind of agree with you that there's not much Democrats can really do, right? And last night, while watching the opposition, I didn't know if Democrats were really opposing the speech or if they were trying to buy an antique coffee table with their auction paddles. For those of you who haven't watched this speech, I'm making light of it, and I think that it's semi-okay strategy, but it's to Mike's point of like, you already have somebody standing in the well of a sacred place, misleading folks, lying, and Democrats are going back and forth from Congressman Al Green from Houston, who got literally kicked out of the chambers by the sergeant of arms, which you can tell was something he wanted to do, and he did it to raise the issue that he hollered at Donald Trump and said, you don't have a mandate to cut Medicare, and which is very important to a 78-year-old man who is who he is. I'd also be remiss this morning as I'm thinking about Houston. The congressman right next to him passed away after that last night. And so we want to send our thoughts and prayers out to them. And I just sat here and had a brain fart and forgot the name of the congressman, but his name is Sylvester Turner. He was 70 years old, and he died after attending. He was there. He died, I don't know what all the implications are, but we should address it. He died last night. But the final point, and I'll throw it back over to Mike, is that, look, I think it would have looked weird if there was nobody in the room, but it may be the exact point that Mike is making here. But the whole thing is that I don't want to normalize crazy. I don't want to normalize, and this is not me being a policy wonk, of somebody coming into our house, the people's house, and misleading the public. This morning at a meeting we were having with some very influential people in Washington, D.C. said, how do we push back to somebody who don't have any ethics or morals or cares about that, Mike?
Yeah, look, that's a fair argument, and it's one that I think I would have largely agreed with until I realized that, look, Donald Trump is just using the Democrats sitting there as a prop. They really can't, without looking
That's a good point,
like they're losing decorum. The fact that he has the shamelessness to just openly attack his political opponents and ridicule them, make fun of them, and kind of poke at the American public that may disagree with him, makes them a part of the spectacle. And look, you make a very fair argument. I'm not going to say I don't agree with it. Certainly agree with the sentiment. I just think we've gotten to a point where if you're showing up to honor this temple of democracy, this body, this floor that for 200 years has represented the greatest democracy in the world, that is now being desecrated by a man that doesn't hold anything sacred, like, you become part of the problem at that point. And maybe the best way to honor it is to not be part of the desecration. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, Chuck. I totally know what you're saying, and I want to agree with it. I know it comes from a place of virtue, a place of honor, of something that we honor as our country. But when the President of the United States doesn't honor it, I don't know that there's any way to kind of protect it other than to not be part of it.
I think you got to think about this in a different way. I'm going to separate the two issues and tell you what sat with me last night. It was the Congress sitting there, losing their shit over Donald Trump. Like, people, like, literally, like, hoo, 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 like you would have thought they would saw Elvis and it was 1975. Like, it was obnoxious how much they were kissing his ass at every step. He wasn't there 2 seconds. They were jumping up and down, doing all that. And here's the point of that. Here's what sat with me. Earlier that day, that morning at 9 a.m., in a Republican caucus meeting, the chairman of the RNC instructed Republican congressmen to stop having town halls. Don't go take a break. Let's not do this right now because of this so unpopular budget that they're fixing to try to put on the American people. Now, you can't have both of those things simultaneously, but they're going to try to. So you've got members of Congress losing their mind over somebody who's literally disrespecting the Capitol but also misleading people with all these false things that he talked about, while they're fixing to try to pass legislation that is so unpopular with American people that they've been instructed not to have town halls. So think about all of that and what me and Mike talk about, mainly me. Mike gets to do the polling on this podcast, and I get to do the numbers in the congressional districts, all of those marginal seats and what we've been talking about. Last week, we talked about 35 truly marginal seats. Mike Madrid saying that could be 50 or 60 in a wave. Well, the reason that wave could happen is exactly what this budget fight's going to be about. And you throw in, there could be some discussion around immigration. The last point I'll make on this, and I'll kick it back over to Mike for more comments, is that there was something he did talk about a lot last night. Actually, two things. One was he mentioned Joe Biden like 25 or 30 times. And the second thing is he talked about immigration and enforcement over and over and over again, whether it was horrific stories of crimes that immigrants had conducted onto people and their guests were in the audience, or he would talk about what's going on at the border. Today, the vice president's going to the border. Like, this border is a strength for them. To Mike's point that he just made, they didn't talk about the economy because it's a weakness, but their strength, they leaned into saying Biden, 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 and the immigration stuff. Did you see that as well?
I did, but I will also say a lot of polling is now showing immigration dropping as an issue as the problem starts to go away. Mm-hmm. Immigration levels are down. They started dropping in the last 3 months of the Biden administration. They did when the Biden administration made the pivot. It was a problem. It was a very real problem. It wasn't just a manufactured Fox News problem for Biden. It was very real. Cost him the election in large part, I believe. But the last 3 months, when they did pivot, when they did make those changes, numbers started to drop. They've dropped further under Donald Trump. The big problem Donald Trump's going to have is if he's not going to have any immigrants to deport pretty soon. He's going to start, having to figure out who else he can attack and go after. So, but the funny thing about immigration is as immigration numbers go down, legal and illegal, the American public starts to have a much more positive view of migrants, of immigrants generally. Okay, as long as the economy stays pretty static. And that's been the theory of the case for the past 20 years. As immigration levels were declining between 2007 and 2021, you saw majority of Americans hold relatively high positive views of immigrants. As immigration numbers, especially those for the undocumented, starts to go up, inflation goes up, the economy gets weaker, people's views on immigrants starts to turn south. Trump's problem is if numbers do start to go down, there's only so much you can manufacture to fool people beyond Fox News. If you're a Fox News watcher, you think that, there's immigrants coming in caravans on a daily basis that are taking over America just because that's the junk they feed you. And if you're willing to consume that and buy that and believe that, then there's no convincing you otherwise. But for the vast majority of Americans who have a reasonable understanding of the way the world works and aren't hooked on the right-wing media ecosystem, it's very apparent that lower immigration levels, and they are lower, and we can get into why in just a second, but he loses his most salient political point. And that's the irony of the situation. At a certain point, illegal immigration has largely been resolved. The bigger problem is we've lost so many of these cheap workers that it's going to create a bigger inflationary cycle and make the economy worse. What will Trump's answer be? It's going to be to blame immigrants even more. The question is that going to work in that environment? I don't believe that it will. I mean, it's going to work with Republicans, but things could be going great, they're going to blame immigrants. Things could be going terrible, they're going to blame immigrants. It's when things are going great, do independents and Democrats start to say, okay, enough with the illegal immigration question. You've screwed up the economy on the other end, and maybe it's time that you fix the real problem. And I don't think that Donald Trump's capable of doing that.
What do you think about this? Don't move the mic over here. Read that and tell me what you think about it.
Supreme Court rejects Trump's request to keep billions in foreign aid frozen.
Supreme Court crazy.
Yeah, Supreme Court breaking against him.
I like that a bit.
Not only will this is breaking news, by the way. We're shifting to another topic here, but the Supreme Court just ruled against Donald Trump's freezing foreign aid to the tune of billions of dollars. His own court, this conservative court. But look, this sets up the nightmare scenario that we've been I think, afraid of, which is, what if Trump does it anyway?
Right.
What if Trump does it anyway? What if he just says, to hell with you guys? Who's going to stop him? And I think that's the game of chicken that Trump has always wanted to play here, right? Is defy the courts and say, we're not going to do it. And what are you going to do about it? Who's going to stop me? I got Pete Hegseth at running the military. I've got Tulsi Gabbard running intelligence. I've got Kash Patel running the FBI. I got the tanks. I've got the intelligence operation. I've got Congress. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What would you do, Chuck?
Look, it'll be so interesting to see how he reacts to this, because this is going to piss him off, because this is what he would call his Supreme Court. He put them in there. He was loving them up just last night when they came in, shaking their hands, popping them on the ass. That's a metaphor for like, attaboy. But something else I want to talk about is looking down the road. So Mike, be thinking about, I'm going to ask you this and give it to you, but I'm going to react to it first. I want your reaction to, like, what's next down the road? What are you looking at down the road? Is it tomorrow? Is it this week? What are the things? Mine, I talked about that this morning on CNN, so I'm cheating. When I'm saying there's been over 1,000 points lost in the stock market. Now, we're recording this on Wednesday. You're going to see this on Friday. We could have won all this back by the time this comes back up. That's how unstable the markets are right now, which is another problem into itself. There's one thing I've learned since I've made a little money is market likes stability. But I digress, and Mike Madrid can talk about the money. If I had Mike Madrid's money, I'd burn mine. But anyway, I would go to these tariffs. And what I'm getting at with the tariffs is looking down the road of what's the effect going to be on the market? Because there's one thing that Donald Trump cares about, which is money in markets, because he's got 13 billionaires in his administration and lots of billionaires around him. And when the market, even though regular people may not feel the market immediately, folks who make lots and lots of money feel the market. And I think he is, he's reactionary to that. And he don't want people saying you're the reason of the market. There was a tweet that somebody put out yesterday. It might have been Mike, for God's sakes, for all I know, he said that Joe Biden should step down if he loses more than 1,000 points in the market in 2 days, which at one point Joe Biden had done in his administration. And Donald Trump had been on Twitter saying that he should step down. Now he's actually done that himself, which is not a shock to any of us. But that's the thing I'm looking at is how are the markets and business, which I think he cares about, reacting to tariffs, price increases, immigration where they need help getting crops out of the field, and those things. That's kind of down the road. What are you looking at, Mike, after what you heard last night?
Well, the chaos that's ensued from all of this, and again, maybe chaos for some people is the exact right word. Chaos might be overdoing it for a lot of other people who might say that's kind of Mike Madrid hyperbole. But instability, Chuck, I think as you accurately characterized it, I think is a very significant problem, not just for markets, although particularly for markets. It's now seeping over into the political conversation. You can't go in and gut thousands of federal jobs the way that they did it, and that's the real key. I think it's a very legitimate discussion. As a Republican, I want to see government being leaner, more efficient, more productive, and I think there probably does need to be maybe a significant amount of reduction of the federal workforce. I'm for that. The way you do it, is what's determinative of how people view the stability of the governance of the entire federal project. That's what's horrifying. That's what's rattling markets. You also, recklessly throw out 25% trade tariffs to our Canadian and Mexican neighbors, are two of our largest markets that we export and import to, by the way. And you're going to have problems with publicly traded companies who rely on the supply chains and rely on the products and markets of these huge markets. That's what you're seeing a response to. But more than the brass tacks, more than just the return on investment, more than just the bottom line dollars, I had lunch with a good friend from Georgetown, a buddy from college who's a well-regarded economist now, and he said and I said, "Why are you in Sacramento?" He came to Sacramento, and he's like, he'd never been to Sacramento in 30 years, right? Who the hell goes to Sacramento on business unless it's politics? He said, "Mike, the number one flashpoint for global risk is the United States of America now." Think about that. The instability of the United States government is now the number one flashpoint for economists looking at the global economy, because we are so big that when we start being led recklessly and without any sense of maturity controlling the levers and power of government, these small changes have massive effects on markets and economics and exchange rates and a whole host of things, when the leader of the free world is flippantly throwing out these, challenges, threats, taxes. And that's what I think is the most dangerous part of this. It's the recklessness, the abandon with which this guy is trying to run the economy. And here's, again, sorry about the Mike Madrid windup. You got to see it in person, Chuck.
Jesus.
It's now seeping over into our politics. So what I'm watching in the immediate run here, the short and medium term here, is the instability of our economics is going to start having political implications. Independent voters do not have confidence that this guy can run the economy already. This is the group that put him into the White House. And the numbers have been dropping since November, by the way, since almost immediately after the election, because all of this talk about trade wars started to escalate before he even took office. Now that it's happening a real life economic impact, we're going to start seeing a change in the politics. His numbers, approval numbers, are already down at a historic range. The only person who's done worse, polled worse than Donald Trump at this point in history is Donald Trump.
Exactly. Donald Trump, one up in Donald Trump on who is less popular. Something that I said yesterday that I found out by doing, again, I've been doing a little research.
Oh, doing his own research.
On the Googles.
Vaccines.
That's it. Nope, not on the vaccines, not on how you go. Nope, not QAnon. And somebody asked me yesterday if I'd ever castrated a cow, but that's a whole different conversation. I found out
Different podcast.
It's pigs. I did a lot of pigs. Anyway, the U.S. workforce is made up of 33% veterans. You know why there's 33% veterans in the U.S. workforce? Is because they get preferential hiring. And you know what? I like that veterans get preferential hiring. If you're going to go fight for this country, you're going to put your life on the line, you're going to shoot bullets at our enemy, come back here, we'll give you a job, count me in every day and twice on Sundays. Those folks have lost their jobs, lots of them, right? And I think that Democrats, for the resistance movement out there, Donald Trump, he loves to wave the flag and how much he loves veterans. He's fired more veterans than anybody in the history of American government. I don't think you should lead with defending all the different bureaucracies and all the firings. I think there's a way to talk about it. Mike just gave you an example of like there's a way to cut waste, but not that with a chainsaw is probably not the best thing. And Democrats, as we talk about resistance, and this has really been something, and I'll just say it, that chapped my ass this week. Very few times do I get angry during the week, but when I do, it's normally about us doing the same thing that we've done over and over again and thinking there's different results. And we've seen all these different ways to resist last night, whether it was paddles, walkouts, folks who left and had things on their shirt. But the thing that really got me this week is people have decided to run for the Senate or run for governor's races, these big races. And in Latino heavy areas, I have seen now where folks are reverting back to, and I don't think I'm okay with giving the Biden-Harris Latino campaign team a pass just yet. And watching them get hired to do a lot more work in a lot more races has been us doing the same thing that we've done over again. Latinos underperformed in every different county around the country, and you're going to hire the same group of folks who did that. And I know that it was a short runway, and I know that all of the things. And I'm not saying that all consultants that aren't Chuck Rocha or Mike Madrid are bad. I'm just saying that we're never going to change if we continue to hire the same people that have put us at Democrats in this position. That doesn't mean that there's not good work going on. The DCCC and House Majority PAC and in the House, we're doing some amazing work because I see us winning those races. Special election after special election. We picked up houses in the last election. So keep that in mind, Democrats. Don't put your guard down. Don't go to the easiest path. Take it from me. And I've taken a lot of heat from this from my own party. We're only going to change as we get new faces and new voices into the party. The problem is our median age in our party and in the consultant class is like 65 or 70. I want to see what young people who are becoming these new voters of, hence why our message hasn't landed in a lot of ways. So I just want to get that off my chest because it was one of the things this week that's really been bothering me. And if you want to connect that to what we saw last night, watch the theatrics. You know, Mike, I give Donald Trump credit. He is a showman from day one. I disagree with so much that he does, but as I sat there last night as a strategist, I was like, man, it's just good messaging to offset all the crazy stuff you know he's lying about when there's a young man who's fought his whole life for brain cancer, another man getting to go to West Point, and I don't begrudge them. I think that is awesome. And I'm mad that we haven't done that in the public, even though we've probably done it in the private. Him signing executive orders, naming a national park in Texas after a young girl who lost her life, like all of those things, right? Sure, I get it, wonky acts, that it's all theatrics. You'd rather see a policy that helped more American. I get that. I think you can do both at the same time. And if we continue to just send sternly worded memos as our resistance, we're never going to get there, Mike.
Yeah, and there was something I think a little bit dispiriting about seeing the paddles going up and saying, okay, this is the way that we're going to push back. I mean, if you're going to sit there and take it, then just sit there and take it. And there is some dignity in that. But if you're not, then, quit with the trying to engage in lower level theatrics about it. I think that, Donald Trump is a showman. This guy's P.T. Barnum. It's his circus. So he knows how to run it well. And part of a circus, 90% of circus is entertainment. The rest of that 10% is execution. And he does both of them, I think, well, at least enough to serve his aims. But, and like I said, I really do. My biggest fear for Democrats at this point in time, and who the hell cares what Mike Madrid thinks about Democrats in their future, but I think that if they win big in the midterms, and it's way out, but I think we're starting to see the fundamentals looking really good for a big Democratic pickup. The problem would be if the Democrats won without learning the lessons that they need to get their party back in order. And that means getting back to being a working class party. And there's a lot of truth, I think, Chuck, in what you're saying, which is you can't have a bunch of old white consultants trying to create a pathway to the Democratic Party for people that live a completely different life than they do. And there is something about, look, I'm a Latino operative, and I've worked in Republican politics my whole career. So I've been around mediocre white people my whole fucking lifetime, and just watching them get contracts, watching them get deals, watching their relationships, even though they weren't half the consultants that I was. Part of that frustration, I think, is understanding that this business is not about the best and the brightest, right? It's about relationships. And at some point, if that isn't challenged for the competency of it, then you're going to keep losing, and you've got to quit asking yourself why. Why is that? If you don't have people who understand real people, trying to convince those people, you're never going to make progress in building up a bigger, broader coalition. That is a big problem for the Democratic Party. At every level. I think it is not just a consultant problem. I think it's an elected official problem. I think it's a voter problem. I see the Democratic Party, again, I'm from California, and I'm starting to see this one-party state, which has been held up as this kind of this, I'll put on a pedestal as the ultimate, paradise of what a blue state, paradise looks like. It's not great for working class people. It's terrible. It's bad for black people. It's bad for Latino people. Overwhelmingly, the state has failed people. And at a certain point, there's got to be some reckoning. And I think that that's what the Democratic Party is going through right now. My question becomes, at what point do the Latino elected officials start making this case internally? Why aren't they demanding more leadership at the staff level, at the consulting level, at the candidate recruitment level to say, America is changing. We need to have people who have lived that change be part of the leadership, or we're going to relegate ourselves to marginalization and irrelevance for the next generation. So I do see what you're saying. I saw that happen in the Republican Party in California for 30 years. People would rather hire their stooge loyalist in Republican politics than somebody who actually understood the state, and they became a super minority, like less than a third of the electorate, because of their inability to evolve. They went the way of the dodo bird, and the truth of the matter is they deserved it.
Oh, we got a dodo bird in there. Look, everybody, we want to make sure that with Mike in town, he was here on our regular recording day, that we got to record us a quick reaction to the, not the State of the Union, but the joint address to whatever, blah, blah, blah. If you want to see more of us together, let us know if you can bring us out to your location for a small fee, maybe $100,000, $200,000.
That's it for me.
Just to come out and do our little stand-up. And you see that me and Mike Madrid actually can get along and be in the same space. He talks a lot of shit when he's on other end of but he's in Sacramento, so I really feel bad for him. But look, you need to keep listening, keep watching. We're going to try to continue to do this every week, and we've got some good guests lined up that we've been talking to, senators, heads of parties. Mike's been talking to the caucus out in California, all different sides of the caucus. We got a lot of great feedback from the brother from Orange County who was talking about what was going on down there. And we're going to continue to try to do this in real time as we're going along. But that only works if you engage with us and tell us what you want to hear, especially on YouTube, because YouTube, you get to see our pretty faces. We need you to subscribe. That doesn't cost you anything. You can get these into your feed on Friday. It gives you something to look at over the weekend when you're trying to relax, because nothing says relax like Mike Madrid and Chuck Rocha. When you just want a little easy listening, and you're tired of NPR or public radio, and you just want soothing things. It makes me think about that Saturday Night Live skit when it's like sweater weather, or was it the one about the sweaty balls? You see me turning the mic so I can get some of your reaction on that?
I don't. Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Anyway, don't forget, if you still have your good pivot to your mom or dad, don't forget to call them and tell them that you love them. Don't forget to like and follow us. Andres and the production team will look for your comments. And until next time, be good.